What if every cry for help was right in front of us, but we mistook it for a nervous smile? The question hangs in the air like a cold wind moving through an empty room, unsettling because of how close it touches the truth. In the weeks following Yu Menglong's fall, the world has replayed his final public moments again and again, searching for signs that were always there, yet never understood. His soft laughs, the sudden stiffness in his shoulders, the strange numbers he held up in photos, the quiet murmurs caught on camera. They were dismissed as quirks, fragments of an introverted artist. Only now does the weight of hindsight land like a stone on the chest. The smile, once celebrated as gentle and charming, now feels like a mask that covered a storm. The digital echo of his last night refuses to fade. A clip, grainy and trembling, captures his voice cracking in the dark as he pleads into the emptiness beyond a window frame. The curtains sway lightly as if answering him, but there is no human reply, no hand reaching back. The setting is hauntingly similar to the place where he was found. It is as if the room itself witnessed a moment the world was never meant to see. People ask themselves if anyone could have stopped what happened, but regret is a cruel companion. It comes only when time has already closed the door. As the days pass, fear begins to ripple outward. Those who once stood firmly beside him now face a shadow stretching over their own lives. His teacher in Taiwan, Sun Durong, receives a message so bizarre and calculated that its intention is unmistakable. Someone had written that he would die of worsening illness on the 25th of October in the year 2025. It was posted quietly, removed swiftly, and remembered permanently. The screen captures spread faster than the threat could disappear, yet the disappearance confirmed what the threat intended. Someone was watching. Someone wanted the message to be seen once, then erased forever. Sun Durong responds not with silence, but with a declaration that chills even the bravest voices. He says he will never take his own life. He says that if he is found dead, it will be because someone decided it. His words travel across borders, across languages, across the digital barrier that separates safety from danger. They are not dramatic. They are not exaggerated. They are spoken with the tone of a man who has already measured the risk and accepted it. The tension thickens when a well-known actor, Hu Ge, appears in a brief recording with an expression that betrays a fear usually hidden from public view. His eyes scan the room, darting as though expecting a threat to materialize. His hands fidget, his breath catches. An older clip resurfaces, where he once said that if he did not change, he might not survive. The words strike differently now. They feel less like a metaphor and more like a confession, whispered too soon. Piece by piece, the illusion of safety cracks. The forces surrounding the case grow darker, more intricate, more desperate. And as fear spreads, one truth becomes painfully clear. The tragedy of Yu Menglong did not end with him. It began with those who dared to say his name. And somewhere behind the curtain, someone has decided who will be silenced next. The days following the first public tremors of the case felt strangely distorted, as if time itself had begun to bend under the weight of unspoken truths. The world around Yu Menglong's name no longer felt still. It vibrated, unsettled, pushed forward by forces that did not wish to be seen. Those who had once walked beside him in the brightness of ordinary days now found themselves drifting into a twilight of silent threats, where every step felt as if it were taken on ground that could collapse without warning. Among them, Sun Durong carried the heaviest burden. He had been a mentor long before he became a defender, a man whose calling was simply to nurture talent, not to confront danger. Yet danger had found him all the same. The strange message predicting his death did not arrive with drama. It appeared quietly, placed with deliberate calm on a public page, as though the author wanted the cruelty to be mistaken for an administrative oddity. But it was not an accident, and everyone who saw it understood that immediately. The date was written with such precision that it could not be dismissed. The intent behind it spread through the digital community like cold smoke. When the post vanished moments later, that absence screamed louder than the threat itself. Things that disappear in the shadows often reveal more than things that remain. For Sundarong, the vanishing message was confirmation that he had stepped into a landscape where the rules of ordinary life no longer applied. He knew it, and his response revealed a quiet resolve shaped by years of teaching young people to stand firm in their own truth. He did not allow fear to swallow him. Instead, he spoke with clarity, declaring that he would never take his own life. If something were to happen, he wanted the world to know it would not be by his hand. His words carried a gravity that pierced through the thickening uncertainty. Yet his declaration did more than protect him. It signaled something else, something heavier. It meant he believed danger was real. It meant he had seen enough to understand that this was not a misunderstanding, not a wave of internet hysteria, but the beginning of a structured attempt to silence every voice, attempting to preserve the memory of a young actor whose death had left too many questions unanswered. While Sundarong offered strength through his voice, fear took a different form elsewhere. A clip of actor Hu Ge began circulating online, showing him in a quiet room under soft lighting. Nothing in the setting suggested danger, yet everything in his demeanor betrayed it. His eyes flicked from side to side, not with the casual scanning of a man adjusting to a camera, but with the desperation of someone waiting for the unexpected to emerge from any corner. His breaths came unevenly, and his hands shifted repeatedly as though searching for a safe place to rest, but failing to find one. People who had grown up admiring him, people who had known only the composed grace of a top star, found themselves unsettled by this new version of him. It was as if the veil between celebrity and vulnerability had torn open, and through that tear they could see the truth that fame never really protected anyone. An old clip resurfaced, one where he had once said that if he did not change, he might not survive. Back then, the line had been interpreted as an artistic metaphor, a dramatic expression of personal transformation. Now it echoed like a warning he had tried to disguise. Sundarong's vow and Hu Ge's trembling silence painted a grim portrait. Two men, vastly different in their public roles, stood on parallel tracks of danger, both connected to the name that had begun to haunt the industry. The air thickened with suspicion as viewers pieced together fragments of fear from these scattered moments. Each clip, each statement, each gesture seemed to hint at an invisible pressure pushing inward from all sides. It became clear that the story of Yu Menglong was no longer contained within the tragedy of a single night. It had become a living force, expanding beyond the confines of the incident, wrapping its tendrils around anyone who dared question the official narrative or offer compassion to the man who could no longer defend himself. Silence, once regarded as a neutral choice, now looked like a shield people raised out of necessity. And just when the public began to wonder how far these shadows might reach, a new voice stepped into the storm, carrying a story that would shift the tension from whispered fear into something far more direct and undeniable. The voice that emerged next did not belong to a celebrity or a seasoned public figure. It came from a man who had built his platform through persistence, commentary, and a commitment to speaking plainly. The YouTuber known as Lao Dang had never imagined that discussing the tragic end of a young actor would pull him into a vortex where silence was demanded, and danger arrived, not through shadows but through direct, unmistakable contact. It began with a message delivered with chilling simplicity. A man claiming to represent Tan Chi reached out, not with curiosity or a desire for dialogue, but with the cold tone of someone delivering instructions. The message insisted that Lao Dang stop repeating the idea that Tan Chi had ties to political figures deep within the governing circles. There was no room for debate. It was a demand, framed as a warning cloaked in polite language. Beneath the politeness, however, pulsed a sharp edge, revealing the gravity of the forces that had decided his commentary could no longer be tolerated. As Lao Dang recounted the exchange, the world listening to him felt the weight he carried in his voice. The representative insisted that Tan Chi had no connection to the incident, that he had not been present at the scene, and that they were prepared to pursue legal action if the accusations continued. The threat was not shouted, yet its restraint made it more intimidating. It was the tone of someone confident that consequences could be delivered at any moment. But what unsettled viewers the most was not the threat of a lawsuit. It was the eerie familiarity of the narrative the man repeated. It matched word for word the messaging from the state's media apparatus, as though the caller had rehearsed a script that circulated only behind closed doors. He described Yu Menglong not as a victim, but as an aggressor who had supposedly attacked someone and then jumped from a building out of fear of punishment. The phrasing, the rhythm, the insistence that this version was absolute truth carried the fingerprints of an agenda far larger than the grief of a single family. Lao Dang spoke calmly, but his recounting revealed the truth buried between the lines. Someone wanted to restore control over a story slipping rapidly out of their grasp. They wanted the public to accept a version of events that felt unnaturally neat and painfully convenient. Each denial, each threat, each repeated phrase pushed the suspicion higher. If this version of the story were true, why did it require so much force to uphold it? 2 days passed. They were quiet, but not peacefully so. The kind of quiet that descends after a warning, when danger lurks unseen, and the next move of those behind it is impossible to predict. Then the next message came. The tone this time was different, softened, almost rehearsed in a new direction. When threats failed to force silence, they tried another method. The representative offered a round-trip flight to Hawaii, framed as a gesture of goodwill, a simple way to encourage him to rest, relax, and stop speaking about the case. There was something unsettlingly ordinary about the offer. It was not dramatic or violent. It was the type of bribe used in corporate scandals, political negotiations, and quiet settlements made far from public view. But in this context, it felt surreal. As if the life of a young man, the cries bottled inside his final hours, and the fear spreading among those who dared to speak his name, could somehow be buried beneath the price of a vacation. Lao Dang refused without hesitation. He called the offer insulting, not because of the destination or the value, but because of what it implied. Accepting it would mean admitting that silence could be purchased cheaply, that truth was negotiable, that his voice could be traded for comfort. His rejection was firm, shaped by a conviction that once a line like that was crossed, there would be no returning. His refusal ignited something among viewers, something that crackled through comment sections and private message boards. People began to piece together the timeline of pressure, threats, disappearances of digital traces, public fear from celebrities, and now attempts to buy silence. Patterns formed where moments had once stood isolated. Suddenly, the world was no longer looking at scattered incidents. It was looking at a structure. As these events connected, the tension around the case thickened. The more individuals resisted, the more aggressive the unseen forces seemed to become. Each threat aimed at the whistleblower hinted at a deeper truth that no one was meant to see. Each attempt to control the narrative revealed how fragile that narrative truly was. And then, Just as viewers began to feel the pressure tightening like a vice, a new shift occurred, one that stretched beyond individuals and into the digital architecture that shaped public memory. Something larger than threats or bribes was beginning to take form, something capable of rewriting what the public believed before they even had the chance to question it. The silence that followed the failed attempts to intimidate and bribe Lao Dang did not feel like retreat. It felt like recalibration. Something larger, colder, and more organized was beginning to stir, as though the forces behind the curtain had finally grown impatient with subtlety. The shift became clear when people across online platforms began noticing the same unsettling pattern. One day, every trace of Yu Menglong seemed to vanish entirely. The next, even the ability to type his name triggered error messages, as if the language itself had been rewritten to remove him. It was not the first time the public had seen a disappearance like this, yet the speed and precision unsettled even the most seasoned observers. The removal was absolute, sweeping across comments, videos, archived posts, and even casual mentions in unrelated conversations. The sudden erasure left the digital space hollow, as though the memory of the young actor had been sealed inside a vault, barred from both grief and truth. People scrambled for explanations. Some believed the disappearance confirmed the danger surrounding the case. Others thought it meant the authorities were preparing an official narrative and needed the slate to be wiped clean before unveiling it. But then something unexpected happened. Just as suddenly as his name had vanished, it reappeared. Mentions that had been restricted were now visible again. Searches for his image no longer produced blank squares. The silence cracked open just enough for speculation to rush back in. The abrupt reversal felt deliberate, not accidental. It was the type of move a strategist makes while preparing a decisive strike. In the absence of clarity, one conclusion spread rapidly. A counter-narrative was being constructed, one designed to overwrite the public's growing suspicion with an alternative version of events, polished enough to appear real. It was during this moment of unease that Lao Dang shared new information. According to sources he trusted, the government might be preparing to release a story portraying Yu Menglong as the aggressor in a conflict involving the child of a local official. The idea was simple, almost painfully convenient. If the public could be convinced that the young actor had harmed someone powerful, then his death could be reframed as a desperate act, not a suspicious one. The narrative would tie a ribbon around the tragedy, providing a neat explanation that discouraged further investigation. The danger lay not only in the accusation, but in the tools available to support it. Modern technology had blurred the line between truth and fabrication. The rise of artificial intelligence meant that a convincing video could be created with only fragments of data, stitched together with such precision that even experts struggled to identify manipulation. Lao Dang cited an example that sent a shiver through viewers. A fabricated scene showing a beloved actress appearing beside an American actor inside a famous pirate film, rendered with such clarity that many believed it was genuine. If something as innocent as a cameo could be produced flawlessly, then creating a video accusing a man who could no longer defend himself required only intention, not evidence. The memory of an older deception resurfaced in the public consciousness. Years ago, a widely circulated video of a tragic event in a famous square had eventually been exposed as staged. The revelation had shaken trust at the time, leaving behind scars that never fully healed. With that history in mind, the possibility of a fabricated narrative surrounding Yu Menglong did not feel far-fetched. It felt predictable. As these fears grew, whispers spread about his family. Some claimed his mother had been placed under watch, unable to move freely or speak openly. Others believed the family had been approached with offers meant to encourage silence, offers wrapped not in kindness but in calculation. These claims could not be confirmed, yet the mere possibility stirred the crowd. In a place where information was controlled so tightly, silence often spoke louder than speech. The atmosphere surrounding the case thickened until it became almost suffocating. What had begun as a tragedy was transforming into something much larger, something that exposed the machinery of control turning at full force. The system did not simply want to quiet the public. It wanted to reshape their memory, to dictate which truths they were permitted to carry forward and which ones would be ground into dust. Still, despite the fear, small pockets of resistance sparked across the digital landscape. People refused to let the young actor's name fade into oblivion. They posted tributes, shared stories, and whispered fragments of truth into places where the wind could still carry them. These acts were small, but in a climate ruled by silence, they felt enormous. Yet the sense of impending movement from the other side continued to grow. There was a weight behind it, a pressure building inch by inch, as though a massive structure was shifting into position just beyond the public's sight. The people watching could not yet see its full shape, but they could feel it, vast and deliberate, preparing to step into the light. And when it finally did, the truth would no longer be measured by what had happened to Yu Menglong alone, but by what the system was willing to do to rewrite his legacy. They came together, not in courtrooms or official hearings, but in places where voices rise and echo, where light and sound blend into something larger than any single person. In the wake of fear and erasure, the first true wave of resistance did not look like a protest. It looked like a concert. On the night of the 27th in Nanjing, the arena lights dimmed as thousands of people settled into their seats, expecting a performance from a national icon. Han Hong stepped onto the stage with the steady grace of someone who had spent a lifetime under public eyes. The band fell silent, the audience held its breath, and a gentle melody began to unfold. The song was one she had written years before, born from a real tragedy in which two parents lifted their child toward safety in the final moments of their own lives. It was a song about sacrifice, about love that does not end at the edge of death. But on this night, the song carried another meaning. As her voice rose, the giant screen behind her came to life. A small figure began to fall through a darkened sky, not violently but slowly, as if suspended between two worlds. From both sides, a pair of enormous hands reached out, catching the child before the ground could claim him. The imagery was simple, almost dreamlike, yet every person in the arena understood what it implied. The falling figure was not just a symbol of loss. It was an echo of the young man whose story had shaken them all. Some tried to keep their composure, but the weight of recognition proved heavy. Tears began to fall, some quietly, some openly. A few voices called out his name, not in anger but in grief, as if they were afraid that if they stopped speaking it, he would truly disappear. The performance became something more than entertainment. It turned into a silent promise that his memory would not be surrendered. Han Hong's decision was not a gesture of rebellion shouted from a podium. It was a choice to let art carry what words could not safely say. During his life, Yu Menglong had quietly donated to her charity foundation, arranging automatic transfers that continued even after his death, until they were finally noticed. For someone so gentle to be remembered only through rumors and official lines felt unbearable. That night, she used her stage to return his kindness in the only way she could. She was not alone. On another stage, in another city, singer Hua Chen-yu lifted his head toward the lights and sang a song that spoke of wanting someone to come back, of a presence that had fallen away too soon. On the screen behind him, a pale silhouette descended, shards of glass drifting like slow rain, a broken clock tumbling after it as if time itself had been shattered in midair. The visual language was unmistakable to those who had followed the story. It was less a performance and more a farewell, wrapped in coded light. Further west, during a show in Xinjiang, singer Zhu Laidi did something even more direct. He told the audience that the next song was written for a friend, a good brother, whose absence he felt deeply. Then he said the name out loud. He did not disguise it. He did not bury it inside symbolism. He offered it to the crowd as if offering a candle in the dark and asked them to remember. Beyond the stages, in the quieter corners of the internet that still allowed honesty to breathe, a veteran artist from Hong Kong typed a question that cut through the fog. He wondered aloud why it had become so difficult to speak simple, sincere words, why everything was being erased, cleaned, wiped away. His post disappeared quickly, but not before it lit a spark. Screenshots traveled further than the original message ever could. In comment sections and private chats, ordinary people wrote their own small declarations. Some asked when the sky above him would finally see morning light. Others vowed they would not stop paying attention, even if their voices felt small. They understood that they could not change what had already happened. But they also understood something else, something quietly powerful. As long as they remembered, as long as they questioned, as long as they refused to swallow every story placed in front of them, the effort to bury him would never be complete. The machinery of control might decide what appears on screens, what stays, and what vanishes. It might decide whose words are amplified and whose names are erased. Yet there is one thing it cannot fully govern. It cannot dictate what people carry in their hearts when they close their browsers and walk away from their devices. In that private place, beyond algorithms and slogans, a different record is kept. It is written by parents who think of their own children when they hear his story, by students who recognize the fear in the eyes of those who speak out, by fans who refuse to let a gentle smile be rewritten as something ugly. It is written by everyone who looks at the gap between what they are told and what they feel, and chooses not to look away. In the end, the question is no longer only about how Yu Menglong died. It is about how the living choose to respond to the silence that followed. Whether they lower their voices and step back, or whether they hold on to his name and pass it quietly from one person to another, like a fragile light that must not go out.